I want to give you a hypothetical scenario here. This man right here that you're watching is Nico Collins, and he is one of the best receivers in all of football. Personally, as a Jaguars fan, the man gives me nightmares for the fact that he is in our division, because he always seems good for at least 2 big deep catches a game against us. As of this video, Collins has had over 1,000 yards receiving in each of the last 3 seasons, has made it to the Pro Bowl in back-to-back years, and has been, undoubtedly, not just the best receiver on the Houston Texans, but the best receiver in the entire AFC South. Now, I want you to imagine that you're playing the Texans and trying to game plan for this offense, and you decide that the best strategy to stop them is to double cover Jalen Noel. Imagine that your strategy for beating the Texans is to just allow man-to-man coverage with Nico Collins, and to double cover Jalen Noel, a second-year man who had under 300 yards receiving in his rookie season. And it's not like you have a shutdown corner on the outside, like a Pat Surtain or a Darrelle Revis, who might be able to do this. You have no one at cornerback. You just genuinely think that the best strategy for stopping this man right here is to double cover a completely different receiver. If you do that, it shouldn't come as a surprise to you that it's not going to work. Your game plan was quite poor, and I think you had no idea who the top players on the Texans were if you watched the film and came away with that as your takeaway. Well, I bring that up because in 1972, this team right here, the San Diego Chargers, was really freaking bad at defense. The Chargers finished that 1972 season with an abysmal 4-9-1 record, including a stretch at one point where they lost 5 straight games, and another stretch where they ended the season on a 3-game losing streak. In fact, the 1972 season was so bad for the Chargers that, at the time, it was the fewest wins they ever had in a season. At a time when the average team was scoring 20 points per game, the Chargers allowed at least 20 points in all but 3 of their games. The Chargers also joined the Buffalo Bills as the only team in 1972 to allow at least 14 points in every single game. And part of why this team right here struggled so much defensively was because their defensive coordinator, who happened to be their head coach, Harlan Savare, in double duty, had no idea what he was doing, neither as a head coach nor as a defensive coordinator, to the point where opposing players were literally laughing at him for how stupid he was. Case in point, what happened on opening day of the 1972 season against the San Francisco 49ers, which turned out to be a sign of things to come. Because in 1972, Harlan Savare and the Chargers had, quite possibly, the worst game plan to ever exist, pulling off a masterclass in what not to do defensively and how not to handle an elite receiver. Because this is the story behind the 1972 Chargers, their opening game of what turned out to be an awful season and what might just be, considering the circumstances, the dumbest defense in NFL history. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff and want to learn more, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for hyping up the video, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time that the Chargers' defensive game plan had no charge to it whatsoever. But before I talk about the game in question and how it went, we need some context to understand who this man right here, San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Gene Washington, was. To open up the 1972 season, the Chargers had a date with an in-state opponent, as they'd be taking on the 49ers at Candlestick Park. The Chargers and Niners had never met before, as this was the first ever meeting between the two teams in franchise history. So there was obviously going to be a little bit of uncertainty in how to play them and determining what their strengths and weaknesses were. However, there was one blatantly obvious thing that the Chargers should have known for months going into their opening day matchup. And that was the fact that this man, Gene Washington, was really freaking good at wide receiver. It didn't end up materializing, but by this point, we were talking about Washington, if he kept up his pace, as a future Hall of Famer. That's how good he was. After being drafted out of Stanford in the first round of the 1969 NFL Draft, Washington made it to 3 straight Pro Bowls over his first 3 seasons, even posting a 1970 campaign where he led the NFL with 1,100 receiving yards and finished second in the league with 12 touchdowns, only behind Dick Gordon of the Chicago Bears. In fact, Washington was so good that at this point, he was just one of 3 receivers in NFL history, alongside Harlan Hill and future Hall of Fame wideout Bob Hayes, to have 3 consecutive seasons to start off his career with at least 40 receptions, 700 yards, and a Pro Bowl appearance all 3 years. Pretty good company to be in. Among just NFL players, Washington had the 6th most receiving yards in league history through his first 3 seasons, and had the 7th most receptions in league history through his first 3 seasons as well. And sure, there were other talented players on the 49ers and on that offense, and no one's suggesting otherwise. The Niners were a very good team. But Washington led the Niners in receiving yards quite handily in each of his first 3 seasons, including a 1970 season where he had 1,100 yards. The next closest player had 363 yards, or roughly 1/3 of what Washington had, and no other player had even 300 yards receiving. So, long story short, if you knew anything about the 49ers, you knew who Gene Washington was. And you knew that the way to stop the 49ers was to contain Gene Washington at all costs. In the 7 games that Washington got 100 yards receiving in over those first 3 seasons, the 49ers did not lose a single one of them. That stat says it all right there. So, if you're the Chargers, as in a team with a bottom 5 defense in points allowed and yards allowed the previous year in 1971, you have to figure out a game plan for stopping Washington. Because if he gets going, all indications are that the 49ers are going to win the game. Which raises the question, what's the strategy? It's easier said than done to cover Gene Washington. However, I'm fairly confident that what the Chargers had in mind was not the right way of going about it. It's almost like a math problem. I might not know how to solve this equation, but I know that eating my pencil is probably not going to get me the right answer. I don't know, maybe this is just hindsight bias, but this seems really stupid. Because what if the Chargers decided to double cover Dick Witcher instead? Yeah, let's not worry about Washington, and we'll let him stay in those one-on-one spots. And we'll give Washington his touches, and let John Brody and the 49ers look his way. And we'll double cover the other guy who had 18 catches for 250 yards the previous season, was seemingly on the decline, who was held without a catch in 5 out of 14 games the previous year, and who had 34 yards receiving across San Francisco's 2 playoff games last year combined. That's one way to do it. Double cover Dick Witcher so that John Brody has to look Gene Washington's way.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, almost immediately, you can probably tell how freaking stupid this strategy is to just leave this man right here open the entire game. Especially when you don't have a shutdown corner that could theoretically lock him up. This is like intentionally walking the batter in front of Shohei Ohtani so you can pitch to him with a runner on base, and you're just going to give him middle fastballs the entire time. This is like intentionally sending Steve Nash to the free throw line by hacking him on every possession with intentional fouls. This is a complete and utter gross misunderstanding of how to defeat your opponent. Did you do, any research on your opponent at all before going into the game? Did you even know who the guy was? I know that game planning for teams was a lot different in 1972 compared to today, just because you didn't have as many resources and advanced analytics and computers and whatnot. But come on, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that Gene Washington is one of the best receivers in football, and they should probably have a game plan to stop him instead of the other guy who's not even a threat in single coverage. This is not like you were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers and had to pick your poison between double covering Lynn Swann or John Stallworth. This was like having a 5-man army to fend off 20 high schoolers and 5 preschoolers, and choosing to have one man fend off the high schoolers while the other 4 fended off the preschoolers. You're misusing your resources here big time, to the point where I wonder if you did any scouting at all in the first place, because no one, not one single person, would be dumb enough to do what you did as one of the supposed brightest minds in the sport, being a coach in the NFL and whatnot. And to say that this did not go well for the Chargers would be putting it lightly. The Chargers double-covered Dick Witcher and held him to just 1 catch, so that part of the plan worked. Although Witcher would have just 2 more catches for the rest of the season, despite playing in every game. So that goes to show you how pointless this strategy was. Truly might be the most pointless double team in NFL history. But, as you might expect, Gene Washington went off, as he caught 8 passes for 140 yards and 3 touchdowns, as he caught more passes and touchdowns than he ever had in a game before, and finished with the 3rd most receiving yards of his career in a game at the time. To be honest, Washington easily could have put up more numbers, but the 49ers were up by so many points that they just decided to stop throwing the ball, as they won 34-3 and led it 31-3 midway through the 3rd quarter, getting to a point where it truly was mop-up duty and the backups came in. If the Niners wanted to constantly throw and Washington wanted to get 250 yards, he could have. It was that easy. One writer called this baffling decision to just not cover Washington throughout the game an absurd miscalculation, which just about sums it up. It was so bad that John Brodie, the starting quarterback on the 49ers, who threw 3 touchdowns, with all of them going to Washington, was laughing at how badly the Chargers screwed things up. He was truly befuddled. As Brodie said, they were really holding up tight end Tech Wallach at the line and doubling on Dick Witcher on that side. That left Gene Washington with single coverage a lot of the time on the other side. There aren't many teams that defend us that way. Yeah, no crap, there aren't a lot of teams that defend you that way, because most teams have a coach with an IQ above 10. When the opposing quarterback, who never criticizes things ever, has a go at the opponent and decides to laugh in their face for how stupid their game plan was, that's when you know. You couldn't imagine Josh Allen saying after a game, "Yeah, the other team has no idea how to defend us, and their strategy was so bad that we were laughing on the bench about it." But here was John Brodie publicly questioning how the Chargers played his side, because it truly was that bad. 49ers head coach Dick Nolan had nothing to say about Harlan Savari's strategy, as he didn't want to bash a former colleague of his and didn't want to break the unspoken code that you don't bash the opposing coach if you're a coach yourself. But he didn't defend it. His silence spoke 1,000 words. That's how absurd this strategy was. Now, when it came to this game right here, even if the Chargers covered Gene Washington and didn't double cover the wrong guy, I'm not sure San Diego would win. Not only were the 49ers a better team, coming off of an appearance in the NFC Championship and eventually making it back to the playoffs in 1972, and not only were the Niners heavy favorites to win the game on their home field, but the Chargers played sloppily besides the Washington fiasco. The Chargers averaged less than 3 yards per carry. They turned the ball over 5 times. They committed 11 penalties. They put the ball on the ground 5 times. They fumbled a lot, especially on special teams. They were -3 in the turnover column. They got just 1 sack all day. and starting quarterback John Hadel went 11 for 25, completing 44% of his passes for 109 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 23.6, which is worse if it did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. But it wouldn't have been as bad, I'm pretty confident of that. At least they would have given themselves a chance, or at the very least, a better chance. So as a word to the wise, if there's a really good player on the opposing team, and your strategy is to double cover a complete non-threat and let the really good player have his moment, then you should probably reevaluate your entire strategy, because in all likelihood, it's a bad one. If you're playing the Raiders and your plan is to leave Brock Bowers open while making sure Trey Tucker is completely shut down, that's really stupid. If you're playing the Jets and your plan is to leave Garrett Wilson open while making sure A.D. Mitchell never touches the ball, that's really stupid. And if you're the Chargers and your game plan for this game right here is to just not cover one of the best receivers in football and devote double coverage to a non-factor to the point where the opposing team laughs at you and wonders why you're doing what you're doing, as we found out, then that's really stupid. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this entire game plan backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.